loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Love, love, love. You guys, so much of what I do in this business is music discovery. You guys made me feel like I was like I was newly just discovering Led Zeppelin for the first time. And that's a
Oh,
great gift. Thank you.
that's thank you. That's very moving to hear. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It it
You see it in the cinema, Carl?
No, I saw it here on I saw it here on my computer. We presented a local screening here in New Jersey in Red Bank, but I had an illness in the family. One of my boys was ill, so I couldn't make it. So your company was kind enough to give me a link. And then I was dragged away by a situation here at the station. And so I actually finished it on my tiny little speakers on my phone last night.
Oh my
I
goodness.
should have been sleeping because I do the morning show, but it was just even on that tiny screen, holding it up to my eyes. And I'm like, man, it was your interviews with the remaining members of Led Zeppelin were so intimate in feel. How did you cultivate that vibe with them?
um yeah, I've never heard them talk candidly in such a direct, candid way before. I think how it happened was that we before we came to see them, we had made a group of films called American Epic about the first blues, gospel, country music in the 20s and 30s in America. So this is like the Mount Olympus of American music. And we wanted to do a follow-up film, and we'd got the idea of doing Led Zeppelin. Um, and as the picking up from American Epic, which is from post World War II through to the 60s. And I'd read this little book when I was 12, a paperback book just called Led Zeppelin, which I think was the first ever thing written about them. And it's now been forgotten. It's been out of print for decades. But it had this wonderful story of these like four kids trying to find their way through the music world in Britain, two from the Midlands, two from the London suburbs, and then meeting in this rehearsal room and all the sort of obstacles they overcome. And I found it inspirational. So I said to Alice, why don't we make this film? And so she said, well, let's start writing it. And
so we spent 7 months writing, researching, looking for all the archive that was available. And there wasn't a lot because Peter Grant, their manager, if he caught anybody filming them, he would rip the film out their cameras. He would chuck them out the theater and smash the cameras. So there wasn't a lot, but we found what there was. We wrote a script, and created a storyboard. And
then we reached out to get a meeting with the group, and incredibly they agreed. And that's when we discovered that they were fans of American Epic. And so we sat down with them, and there was like this meetings with each of them. I think the one with Jimmy was like
the first one was 7 hours long. It was like an exam a little bit.
And I'd be going through this storyboard, leather-bound storyboard, and this is the point where you meet Robert Plant, and he'd be like,
what was the name of the group that Robert was singing in when I first met him?
And I'd be like, Obstweedle.
Very good. Carry on.
And we just put this, and then we met, John Paul Jones. And when I met him, this was particularly John Paul Jones was the striking one because he's, of all Led Zeppelin, the living members, he does the least amount of press. And I just was so struck by what a wonderfully warm, funny, charming guy he was. And then Robert and Jimmy, how amazingly engaging and funny and they were privately. And so the purpose of the film was like, we got access because I think they were big fans of American Epic. And then this storyboard was so detailed. I mean, frame by frame, what this film was going to be and all the research that had been done, that they were relaxed talking to us. And so I just thought...
And also they'd opened up their address book, so we'd met a lot of their friends. So we spent a lot of time in the West Midlands of England with meeting all Robert's school friends and old bandmates from way back in the day before Led Zeppelin.
Because what they did was when they agreed to do the film, we sort of said there's one rule of the road. It needs to be an independent movie, i.e., you can't produce it or edit it. It's got that's we don't make those type of films. And to their credit, and there's no other major act that would do this, they let us make the film exactly as we wanted to make it. They did not interfere with it editorially at all. And not only that, because we wanted the audience to hear it in their words because they've never spoken before, you obviously, as serious filmmakers, we have to fact check the film and also make sure we understand what they're telling us, that what it means. And so they opened up all their address books, to all their school friends, so we could actually telephone and move around and get all this background. So we met all these amazing people from their childhood, the groups they're in, but all the great rock producers from that time that they worked with as session musicians. So people like the late Shel Talmy became really good friends. I had long conversation with Glyn Johns, and all these people, Vic Flick, the guitarist that does the James Bond theme.
Yeah. Yeah, so you kind of walked in with a sense of credibility and built up trust because they knew your previous work about who their heroes were, and you were able to kind of get past anything that, a schmo like me would have to jump over. You had that. That's
Well,
If you'd spent 7 months researching and writing, I'm sure they'd spend as much time with you, Carl.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, our message is there's nothing special about us. We're just filmmakers trying to make the best movie we can. And what the lesson it is that you can do what we did. Like, we weren't coming in with like 5 Academy Awards on our shelf. We were walking in, but our previous film was a film made for love with passion about a subject that matters and we cared about, that isn't an obviously commercial subject. Well, that brought us credibility with them. And the second thing was we came in, and this is the Zeppelin way and what the whole film's about. When we came in, we had worked out exactly the story we were going to tell, and we'd done the research and we'd tracked down a lot of archive already. And so that's the Zeppelin way, is like, be prepared. And so what's amazing is they're actually very collaborative, even though this is the first project they've really come together on in 18 years since the O2 Arena.
and they did come from a background of experience, and that's another thing that was cool about your movie, is that you showed everything that prepped up and that made them who they were, so that when the pieces were there, it's just gone. It's gone. Like, we're off. The train is left. I mean, literally, the song, the train is gone.
The train kept rolling. I mean, it's like the moment they meet, it literally explodes, and they're running like Jesse Owens on this track, and they're being hit by all kinds of obstacles. Like, the media hates them, the UK record companies don't want to sign them, but they are tearing down that track. And so everything they are is based on what they did leading up to that rehearsal thing. But the key thing, that's the most important thing about Zeppelin, is the music. And the music is absolutely freaking amazing. Like, when you're making this film and you're 5 years cutting it and you're trying to get it so it flows like a feature film on screen, getting all the dialogue flowing, it was such a work. But the music, anytime the music came up, the performances, I'd be in the edit room going, God, they sound incredible.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That communication breakdown and the days and
so it's like, that's why you get
just let them roll. It was awesome.
You get full songs in the film, that's why you have full songs playing. And so my recommendation is, see it on the biggest screen you possibly can with the biggest speakers, because that is what this film was made for. We pulled in every single original negative, all the best audio sources. I mean, we have literally done no digital tampering with their recordings whatsoever. It's like, don't mess with Zeppelin music. They know what they're doing with that. You're getting the pure 69 sound.
Did you walk in and they not know you were going to play the interview with John? Did they not know you were going to play some of the recordings, like the performance at the Bath Festival? Did you surprise them? Were those real reactions? Because the reactions
Oh,
were
yeah,
gorgeous.
yeah. The whole interview is actually full of surprise things being pulled out of our suitcase and put onto screens for them. Yeah, yes.
The
Yeah,
vibe was
they are
beautiful.
really they're really watching Bath for the first time. And it's almost in the film is like the tip of the iceberg. It was a constant, like, when we're walking them through their life in real time. So we were from their childhood, we were constantly putting things on the screen that we were hoping, and oftentimes was the case, they hadn't seen or heard in 60 years,
And
Um,
that helped cultivate this vibe of intimacy in your film.
yeah,
And
Then
yeah,
and
go ahead.
enjoyment and fun,
and
because
enjoy,
I'm
yeah,
really
yeah.
going back in time and remembering by seeing all these things that we're pulling
Yeah,
up.
like, there's some things that aren't in the film. Like, there's one point, we were talking about this club in the Midlands that Robert used to go to, where so many of the influential acts he saw, the kind of the West Coast acts he used to play, like Captain Beefheart and these things like this. And when we chat to him about that, we would have found someone and have got the original flyers for those shows in 1967, and just be handing them to him, going, "Okay, these shows at Frank Freeman's, and he'd be holding them and like smelling them, and like, and like with John Paul Jones, we were talking to him about how he'd become the organist for this tiny little church in Eltham, and you get to really understand how different John Paul Jones is. What the music that he brought was from such a different source than rock. Like, he had a classical background. He was a church organist and a choir master. He was arranging some of the biggest hit singles in America. He arranged the biggest hit single in America in 1967, "To Serve With Love."
Yeah.
And you've got this guy, and he's coming, and I remember showing him the church, and that church that he was at was bulldozed like 2 years after had been choir master at 14. And so there he is, seeing it for the first time since he was for 14 years old. And
I'd
so
love
the
that little
emotion.
clip of the interview when he said, but it was a good gig and he was a really cool priest.
Yeah.
That was very
Yeah,
fun. And
yeah.
so it was that design that so you walked in with all this in a plan.
Uh,
What changed in the process? Like, did everything go to plan, or did you come out like with an idea and say, let's change this, or did everything just fall into place?
well, firstly, you had a pandemic, so that wasn't part of the plan.
Okay.
So
So it took a bit, that made it take a bit longer than it was supposed to.
that's like a giant roadblock to like working with groups of people, then taking it to theaters and trying it out on dispassionate audiences.
Uh,
The second thing is that if you look at the goal, yeah, the aim of the film was true. We had a story we wanted to tell, and and let's say, so the result is we get to the top of Mount Everest, but we've got to navigate the path there. But the goal of what the film was always the same from the beginning, and actually the finished film is almost frame for frame the storyboard that we wrote. But the path getting there was very complex and difficult to navigate, and to, as Jimmy says, to stay true. So it was amazing how much making the film mirrored Led Zeppelin's own journey, and the message that, like, so Jimmy gives the audience at the end of the film, which I wanted him, asked him, could you give a message to any 13-year-old girls and guys about what something that will help them do what you did? And he gives this wonderful message at the end of the film, and I just thought that's absolutely true of what we had to go through. I mean, I think the big thing though was getting John Bonham's voice in the film. The band, I had said to the group, we want John Bonham to speak for himself. And I remember Robert saying,
He said, I don't know how you're going to make this film because there wasn't any footage. We didn't do much television and we weren't filmed.
and John and he wasn't aware
Uh,
of John doing any interviews that he could remember hearing anymore. But we searched and searched and searched, and we eventually found a couple of press interviews, you know, but with the clattering beer bottles and all that business. But we found 3 radio interviews that hadn't been heard, and 2 from America, but one from Australia, which was a really long one. And that was, you know, we again, American Epic was our savior with this. We heard this Australian interview. We were able to send it to Australian friends, and they eventually identified the DJ, a guy called Graham Berry. And then from that, we worked out this would have been for an Australian Sydney station called 2SM. And we called 2SM, they said, we don't have the tape of that interview. And so I said to them, is there anywhere you've ever sent old tapes to? And they said, well, we have sent some of them to the University of Canberra. So we called the University of Canberra, who didn't have it. And I sort of said, but yeah, do you have any uncatalogued tapes? And they went, yeah, we have thousands, like that.
Oh.
Luckily, they'd done an American Epic Festival, and we'd been really helpful with that, and we stayed up till 3 a.m. to do a live introduction on their theatre. And I said, would you mind looking? And so they spent 3 months looking, and eventually we got a phone call and go, Bernard, get your email, like that. And I opened up my email, and there was this amazing audio of John. And so I persuaded them to send the 1/4-inch tape in, which was way more interview than was on the bootleg. And bam, there was John. And the amazing thing, and then shortly afterwards, we found these 2 other interviews, also with other wonderful material. And I noticed that the stuff that John was saying was commenting on things that none of the other band members were talking about. And it was just like this perfect gift. And on top of that, he's the one guy that's not, you know, on camera. Then Deborah, his daughter, we were chatting to her. Sorry, his sister, excuse me, Deborah, his sister, Deborah Bonham, said, I've actually got all these 8mm reels that our dad Jack filmed, and she let us develop all those reels from the, you know, from the very early 60s. And there is John playing drums on his first drum kit, like where it's just a snare and a cymbal. I mean, like mind-boggling material. So of all the members in their childhood at the beginning of the film, he's the one that's on camera. You see him doing all these things and stuff like that. And so it was like this feeling like he found a way, John, to get to us and say, look, I can be in the film. You know, they don't have to talk for me. And you could definitely, he's his own man. You know what I mean? He's like, he doesn't want people talking for him. You know what I mean?
Those 3 guys really loved hearing from him in that way. It was clear. And
yeah,
that was a real gift that you brought us as fans, but you could tell in the film it was a gift for them that you gave them.
I'm very touched by that. And I also am touched because I think Robert Plant has a wonderful, wonderful story to tell. They all do, but Robert's story is very inspirational for a lot of kids that maybe want to do something. And in his case, his parents are saying, you got to be a chartered accountant or we're going to throw you out of the house, which they do. And so I didn't want for Robert on a personal level to have to tell John's story. And that's what he's often, the few times he talks about Zeppelin, he's often asked to speak on behalf of his friend. And I thought, I want you to be able to tell your own story and focus on that. And so here's John, and he can come in and tell him a story for himself, you know?
I do.
Yeah.
And his family really liked it. After the premiere at the Chinese Theatre a week ago,
Oh my
we were
goodness.
approached by this handsome young man who came up and put his hand out and shook our hand and said, thank you so much. That's the first time I've heard my grandfather's voice. And it was Jagger Bonham, Jason Bonham's son.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the time. We're getting the wrap call. And again, it was really a beautiful program to sit and enjoy. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Just well, you thank you for spreading the word and see it on the biggest screen you can find. That's what it was, with all your friends. It's made as a communal experience. Yeah.
Cheers. Enjoy your day. Thank you.